Comic Book Savant, episode 383. Welcome back to another episode of Comic Book Savant. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode is the second one in the new series called Countdown, where I take a particular subject or topic and I run it down ranking from worst to first. This episode is going to be all about the DC animated movies, and I'm going to be running those down. But before I get into that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsor for this episode and every episode, which is InStockTrades.com. It's one of the best places that you can go online where you're looking for collected editions, hardcovers, omnibus, Marvel Masterworks, you name it. If it's in a collected edition, you should be able to find it over at InStockTrades.com. They have some of the best discounts around, ranging from 35, 42 up to 50% off. If you place an order that is $50 or more, you get free shipping within the U.S., and that's only for U.S.-based customers. If you happen to live outside of the U.S., you still get all the great savings, but you just don't get that extra bonus of free shipping. But they do have some of the most reasonable and competitive international shipping rates around. So definitely don't be afraid to check out the site because you'll save a ton of money. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. If you like the content that I do here and you want to expand out and find some more podcasts to listen to, it's a great one-stop shop to go to. There are literally hundreds of different podcasts that are listed there. You can find them listed on particular characters, publishers, team books, etc. So you have a lot to choose from over at the Comics Podcast Network. So if you have a moment, stop by. Again, it's comicspodcast.com. Again, just a totally great resource if you're looking to check out more of this related content in the world of comic books. Now, with all that being said and all that out of the way, let's jump into this second episode of Countdown. So we're looking at the DC Universe animated films. There have been quite a few. I haven't seen every single one of them. I've seen like 95% of them. And those are the movies I'm going to rank from worst to first. The first movie I'm going to get into is the very first one they released, which I still think to date is one of their weakest releases, which is Superman Doomsday. It was just poorly conceived, and I know they're kind of redoing this because this was the introduction of Doomsday and kind of the death and rebirth of Superman. They're literally doing that it's going to be more, because this was an interpretation of that storyline. And the Death of Superman animated movie that's going to be coming out later this year. So I think that'll definitely be a way better interpretation of what they came up with in Superman Doomsday. The animation wasn't that great. Just wasn't a fan of the voice casting. It was their first effort, and they definitely improved because they've had 20 some odd releases now. So they definitely have gotten better. But again, they kind of stumbled out of the gate with Superman Doomsday. So that is my least favorite of the DC animated movies that I've seen so far. The next one for me is Batman Gotham Knight. I didn't really care for this one at all. They kind of took an approach with Gotham Knight. I think they got the same people behind the Animatrix film to kind of do this. This was, I think, Batman Gotham Knight came out between Batman Begins and Batman the Dark Knight. I think it came out in between, or maybe it came out at the same time as The Dark Knight came out. And it was a series of short, different animated things done by anime directors, and it just was a miss for me. I own this one. I never go back and watch it. I might have watched it twice total ever. Just didn't land for me. Next one on the list for me is Batman: The Killing Joke. They decided to add, because the Killing Joke was such a direct and kind of short story to adapt. They wanted to add some like supplemental content on, and they added this whole subplot that Batman, spoiler if you haven't seen the Killing Joke animated film, that Batman had a sexual relationship with Barbara Gordon, so making everything kind of more personal when she was shot and paralyzed, which this came off as very perverted and kind of I just didn't like it. It didn't feel right. It seemed very forced. And it just kind of threw off the whole thing, adding that part on the later part of the film that just jumps right into the straight adaptation of the Killing Joke was fine, but I felt like it just missed overall as an animated release with that whole supplemental part that just really didn't add anything to it. It just felt shoehorned and forced in, and it just overall left a bad taste in my mouth, and I just didn't care for it. Justice League Doom was loosely based on the Justice League Tower of Babel storyline. They changed, some of the characters that were in it for different reasons. I felt like this was a very loose adaptation. I was somewhat disappointed. I love the Tower of Babel story. It's one of my favorite Justice League stories. And it just wasn't adapted to its proper potential. So it was kind of a miss for me. This has been one of the movies that I was most anticipated for, but then in watching it, it's decent, but it's not nearly one of my favorites like I would have hoped. As much as the source material is, this animated adaptation definitely drops the ball a ton. Next movie for me is Batman Year One. I own this one as well. It's an adaptation of the Batman Year One storyline. It's a decent storyline in the comics. It's not one of my favorite Batman stories. I kind of feel like it's a dull, kind of boring, plotting story. And that's kind of what you got. It's pretty much a really good adaptation of it. I mean, the voice work is solid, the animation is solid, but it's just kind of like a blah. It's not one of the most exciting stories for me. And again, it is the story itself, the source material that it's based on, didn't wow me, and the movie didn't wow me, though it is very nicely done as far as animated, as far as the style is animated and the voice cast and all that. But again, it's a solid story, but it's nothing memorable that I have to go back and watch that every year. And I do apologize for the noise. I guess the landscapers decided to right in the moment while I'm in the middle of recording to start landscaping close to my apartment. So I do apologize for any noise that you hear in the background. It is not my intention. It's what I'm kind of stuck with and got to roll with. Next for me is Justice League Dark. Again, this falls into the same category, which is good, not great. It's fun for what it is. Is not overly memorable. I think this was one of the with the Killing Joke, Justice League Dark was rated R. It was cool to see the occult, heroes and the villains and that side of the DC universe explored in animated form. So, like I said, is decent, not great. The next one for me is Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. This is, again, all these movies right here in this little section are all solid movies. They're not home runs. They're good singles and doubles. Nice animated style, solid story. Again, it didn't wow me. I've seen it a few times. I don't think I don't own Justice League Dark or Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. But again, I've seen them multiple times. They're decent movies. Nothing too memorable to talk about there. Next one is Superman Unbound. Again, falls in a similar category. Not too many notes to say on that one. Batman Assault on Arkham is basically Suicide Squad. Proof of concept for the Suicide Squad movie. It came out a little bit before that. Again, solid. It's based in the universe of the Batman Arkham games by Rocksteady. This was pretty good. Really, it's entertaining. I would watch it again. I don't own it, but I would buy it if I saw them on sale digitally. But you don't really. It's hit or miss when you see the different animated movies, on sale. And for these, I don't necessarily think I run out. For certain ones, I will, and I have paid full price for. Other ones, I wait. Because again, like I always say, I ball on a budget. So if I see them on sale for $10, I'll grab them just because I'm a completist. But I have a long way to go to fill out my collection on the animated movies for sure. Because I might own a third of them because they're like, I think it's like 25, 26 of them at this point. So I pick them up where I can. Next on the list is Batman versus Robin. I kind of dig these Batman movies. Like the next ones is Batman versus Robin, then Son of Batman. Those are my next two. They're solid. They're entertaining. Batman versus Robin is, I think, the second film. Son of Batman is the first, where they introduce Damian Wayne into the fold, and that's a solid story. Then Batman versus Robin is when Damian is trying to be corrupted. It kind of, for the most part, loosely pulls from the source material in Morrison. Was Morrison still writing it then? I don't think he was writing it then. I think Patrick Gleason and was writing the book then, but it picks up a storyline where a villain tries to basically sway Damian over to his side to fight his father and to be his protege. So it's I kind of like that story of Batman versus Robin. Son of Batman is an introduction to the storyline of introducing Damian into Batman's life. Again, solid movies, not great, good views. Green Lantern First Flight is the next one on my list, and Emerald Knights. I own both of these. First Flight came out, I want to say First Flight came out when they had, on the Cartoon Network, they had the CGI series. It didn't even last a full season, but it was so good. They did First Flight. And then I think Green Lantern Emerald Knights came out right in concert with the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern debacle. I think First Flight probably, both movies are solid. I think Emerald Knights is a little bit better because they show some backstory with different Green Lanterns. And it's a kind of a tale of the Green Lanterns. This probably would have been a better name of it than Emerald Knights. But both are solid movies worth adding to your collection. I own both of those. Next movie on my list is Justice League Throne of Atlantis. It adapts the Throne of Atlantis, a storyline from the New 52. Solid movie, introduces Aquaman into the fold. Because they in the DC animated universe, they have different kind of lines. With the Justice League movies, they were adapting a lot, especially a couple of years back from the New 52. So they did, Throne of Atlantis. Before Throne of Atlantis, they did Justice League War, which is the next one on my list. And they did some other stories that I'm going to get to further in the countdown. Next movie on my list is Justice League Gods and Monsters. This was an original story that they adapted just into a movie, so it's one of the stuff that's not based on pre-existing work. I really like this movie. It's a really good movie, strong movie. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Next movie is Batman Bad Blood. That was a really good one. Jay Olivia directs most of the different Batman animated films, so this is in his series in line with Batman vs. Robin, Son of Batman. This was the third movie. They introduced cool characters. We see Batwoman. We see Batwing that was introduced during the New 52. Really cool, fun, action-packed movie. Next movie on my list is Justice League versus the Teen Titans. That was a really fun movie. I really enjoyed that one. I don't own that one, but I need to pick that one up. Next one on my list is Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. This is adapted straight from the first trade of the Superman Batman series that started back in the early 2000s with the Ed McGuinness artwork. Really good story, very well adapted from the source material with some little twist along the way. Justice League, next on the list is Justice League, The New Frontier. Pretty much adapted, pretty straightforward from the New Frontier series by Darwin Cook, rest his soul. Had a chance to meet him in Heroes Con. Oh God, it's been like about a decade ago. One of the coolest dudes you ever wanted to meet. He was cool as the other side of the pillow, as Stuart Scott used to say back on Sports Center, rest his soul as well. He was just a really nice guy, cool. He was a pimp. Now, Darwin Cook was a pimp. He was an older guy, but he had some hot chicks on him when I saw him. We were out to dinner, me and some other podcasters, and he came into, it was like a Tex-Mex restaurant right across the street from the convention center in downtown Charlotte. And he walked in. He had like two young girls on each, on each arm. And I was like, man, what he doing? He was pimping, man. He was a really cool dude. Just really a free spirit. It was really cool just in passing, seeing him. And we were just like, hey, we're huge fans. And he was just like, hey, when we were there at the same restaurant. So it was like, just in passing. I didn't sit down and talk to him or anything like that. But he just seemed like a really cool, charismatic guy. So this adapts his work so well. So it's definitely worth checking out. It's slower. Covers heroes in the 40s through the 30s through the 60s or something. It basically adapts the superhero DC universe kind of in that time frame. So it's kind of like a throwback piece, but it's really cool. And they captured his art style extremely well in that animated film as well. Next one is Teen Titans-Judis contract. Love the source material. They did a really admirable job adapting it. It's not perfectly adapted, but it's pretty strongly done. It's one of the better ones I feel like they've done over the years with the DC animated universe. Next one is the Wonder Woman. This was one of the first handful of ones they did. I've been waiting for them to do another Wonder Woman animated film. It was really good. It's really, if you've seen the Wonder Woman movie, it's kind of based on some stuff with that. Ares is the big bad. The only thing they did in commemoration when Wonder Woman came out, because it had been a while, they put out a new version of this because it was released. Like I said, it was maybe the first 3 or 4 of the animated films they did. So they put out like an updated release of this one, but I would like to see them, do another Wonder Woman story, maybe hopefully before Wonder Woman 2 comes out next year, that they'll put a Wonder Woman movie on the slate. I mean, she's been in the Justice League movies and so forth, but I would like to see her get her own standalone animated film. Next movie is Gotham by Gaslight. I was tempted to pick this up based on a review that my friend Heath Holland over at Serial at Midnight. You've heard me talk about his show before. He has a website, serialatmidnight.com, and he has a YouTube channel as well. He did a review of Gotham by Gaslight. It went on sale on iTunes shortly thereafter. I picked it up for $10, and based on his recommendation, I checked it out and really enjoyed it. I really thought it was a good adaptation. I had never read the actual source material, but just like this is a story of in a steampunk world, is the story of Jack the Ripper with Batman thrown in. This was really good. It was really caught me by surprise, but it was really fun time and really well done. Next one is Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. I own this one as well. Really good story, Justice League story. With the Injustice gang, very well adapted, fun time, awesome animation and voice casting on that one as well. Next one for me on my list is Superman versus the Elite. This is I don't know if this is adapted off of any comic book story. I'm not 100% sure because, as you know, I'm not a huge Superman fan, and I read certain runs of Superman here and there depending who's on the book. But this movie is one of the most underrated, I will say, of the DC animated films because it kind of came out like a blip. They didn't publicize it and advertise it very heavy. It was on Netflix years ago, and I watched it, and it really blew me away. It's a really, really good movie. It's like Superman, he's fighting off the Elite, which is, I think it's like 3 people that have powers. They're like international heroes, and he tackles them head on. It's just really good, a kind of darker Superman story, but really good. The animation's good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you've not seen this one, I would recommend you checking this one out. I don't know if it's still available on iTunes. I mean, not iTunes, but Netflix. But that's where I originally saw it years ago, and I watched it a few times afterwards. I don't own it, but I want to pick it up and add it to my collection because it's really, really good. Most people don't talk about it, but I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. Next for me is also another Superman movie for the non-Superman fan, All-Star Superman. I love the All-Star Superman series. This is well adapted off of that. Just heartfelt, really good Superman story that I really enjoyed, and the film does a great job in adapting it so well. Next is Batman Under the Red Hood, a really good adaptation. I always picked up the trades and just never got to it. I haven't picked them up on digital, so I've never read the actual comic story. I've only seen this movie. I've seen it multiple times. This is when they brought Jason Todd back as the Red Hood, the story line that was done by Judd Winnick back in the day. I love this movie. Is more kind of darker Batman story. I don't know how well it is adapted from the source material since I never read the source material, but I love the film itself. Highly recommend that. The next pick is my number 2, which is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. It was a deluxe set. It was broken up into 2 parts, but it adapts the Frank Miller original Dark Knight Returns Frank Miller series into 2 films. Just animated extremely well. They really put their money where their mouth was on this one. The voice casting, just everything about this is phenomenal. You need to get the deluxe version where they put both parts together so you can watch them back to back. It runs because they're like an hour and a half a piece, so like a 3-hour movie. So well adapted from the source material. I actually read The Dark Knight Returns. A friend actually lent me the trade. This is actually what got me into starting to buy trades. My friend let me borrow the trade of this, and then I think shortly thereafter I bought my first trade, which was Kingdom Come, which I recently reviewed not too long ago, and it prompted me down the road of getting into trade collecting back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And last but not least, my number 1 DC Universe animated film is Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. Seeing this movie actually shocked me because that is a very dark story, just the main story. It was a lot of spin-offs and offshoots and all that kind of stuff, but just the main story itself was very dark and very graphic, and this was a shift because the DC animated universe up until this point kind of shied away from going too dark. It was scenes where Wonder Woman was fighting the Shazam, and in the Flashpoint universe, Shazam was like 7 kids, and she like beat Shazam down, and it was little kids, and like it was scenes where she killed them, and like they kind of showed it off camera, like where it was the shadow, but you saw her like snapping necks and killing the kids. Like they went there. Literally when I saw it on film, like my jaw dropped. I was like, wow, they went there in the adaptation of this movie. I think is probably one of the most accurate adaptations of a story line that I've probably seen to date for one of their films, but I really enjoyed it, and I own this one as well. But definitely, if I have to recommend, if you haven't seen them or haven't heard of them, definitely check out Superman versus the Elite. I think you'll enjoy Gotham by Gaslight. Teen Titans-Judis Contract, Wonder Woman, and Batman versus Robin. Those would be the 5 that I would kind of throw out as recommendations if you haven't checked them out already. I will also, if I remember, I will put a link in this to Heath's review of Batman versus Batman Gotham by Gaslight, because his review really sold me on it and encouraged me to pick it up. So I will try to link that. If you check this out on the website, you'll see in the posting that I'll have a link over to his YouTube channel in that particular review, because he really sold me on it. So I'll link it there so you can check it out to see if it's worth your time after you see his review. But that is all that I have for you guys. This is the second episode of Countdown. Like I said, it's kind of cool getting these different topics and be able to run them down. I'm going to be looking to do more of these in the future. As always, you can follow me on social media at Comic Book Savant on Twitter and Instagram. Also, it's the Facebook.com. Comic Book Savant is a Facebook page. And as always, all the links you can find at comicbooksavant.com on the internet. That is all I have for you for this episode. I will see you guys next time for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys take care and have a good week. See you soon.